All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I am excited because, I've been meaning to watch this, that documentary with a group. We had a huge group of people, and I think it paints an interesting picture. It makes brings to mind some interesting conversation moving forward. But before that, let's get started by going around the room, and we'll have you guys introduce yourselves, where we can find you, as well as, let's see, imagine you're a co-pilot in Star Wars. You look over to your left, who's flying the ship? And why? All right, I know I'm throwing you guys a curveball here, but and I will start with Brooke.
Well, hello. My name is Brooke, or B Dazzler on TikTok. What else did you want me to talk about? I blanked.
Yeah, just where we can find you and what you do, if you have anything to plug, and then who are you the co-pilot for?
Who am I pilot? Okay. Well, I'm B Dazzler on TikTok. I do lots of Star Wars stuff, but I've been diving into the Marvel stuff too lately, since that's been kind of the thing of this time of year. And I also have an Etsy store where I make cool earrings. You can find that at Far Far Away Factory. And if I was the co-pilot of someone, I gotta go with Boba Fett, just because Slave One is so cool, and I love him. So
awesome.
There's that.
I love it. And how about you, J. Kev?
Yeah, so I'll let me start off with who I'm co-pilot to. I want to go with Poe Dameron because that's one hell of a pilot, as our buddy Finn has told us, and he is. So, but there's several pilots I would love to sit with, just to admire their skill. Anyway, J. Kevin Parker on TikTok. That's my biggest platform right now. I'm trying to build out my YouTube channel, which is Epic Worldview. So I'm going to be doing more content there. And yeah, that's all I have to plug at the moment. But I'm hoping to open a merch store eventually with a couple of my cool sayings on T-shirts and mugs, like Fragile Fanboy Tears, for instance.
Nice. One of my favorite new things that have been added is on Element 7's store. He has a shirt that just says, "That's not canon."
Oh, this shirt?
Oh.
Oh, nice.
It's awesome. And how about you, Hammy?
Hello, everyone. You guys can find me on TikTok at Hammy Demand. You also can find me on Twitch at Hammy Demand, where I have a Star Wars podcast. And if anybody in the chat likes sports, I usually have a weekly podcast where I talk about that. You guys can also find me on YouTube, where I will upload my podcast, and that's just my regular name, Drew H. And I guess for me, I would take, in my opinion, the best pilot in the galaxy, Anakin Skywalker. I mean, I grew up with the Clone Wars, so he was obviously my favorite character. So I'm going to have to go with Anakin.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, and then obviously if you're here, you probably know me. But who am I co-piloting for? I am going to be sitting right next to the smoothest man in the whole galaxy. I'll be cruising with early days Lando, early or late days. Whether it's the Lady Luck or the Falcon. I'll take Billy D or Childish Gambino any day.
As long as you're the one drinking the Colt 45 and not him while he's flying.
We got autopilot,
That's true.
But I wanted to get into it. Like I said before, we watched as a big group The People versus George Lucas, which, if you guys don't know, it's a documentary. It came out in 2010, and it kind of just goes through how would you guys describe it? We'll go to Brooke. I'm curious how you would describe it.
I would describe it. I feel like the title is interesting right off the bat. I would say it's like overall, it's like fan reactions to Star Wars, because I feel like in the beginning it goes through how much Star Wars means to the fans, how much it means to people, what it's done for them. And then it starts to move into like the timeline of when the special editions came out and how people reacted to that, and then when the prequels came out and how people reacted to that, and it kind of slowly goes from like up here to all the way down. little negative there, but
it's still fascinating. And then real quick, I want to do a little bit of shout outs, because I have Star Wars lawyer Julia Christine here, Darth Lucifer, Darth Not Vader, Harith Productions, Cal Forer, Elon, just an awesome group in here. I have Cad Bane wants Chopper to be his pilot, which Chopper is very capable at flying the ship, so that's cool. Harith says Loden Greatstorm, Star Wars lawyer, agrees with me with Baron Ladonis, with our guy Lando. Arya L is all about Hera. Elon agrees with you with Anakin. Darth Not Vader says flying is for droids. It's awesome. So awesome group hanging out here in the chat. How about you, Jay Kev? What are your thoughts? How would you explain this if you're trying to tell people about watching it, and do you recommend it?
First off, I absolutely recommend it to anyone who's a Star Wars fan for perspective, if nothing else. I think this perspective it gives you is important, especially if you find yourself angry at anything that Star Wars has put out ever. Go watch this, and maybe you'll see a mirror, perhaps. And in terms of how I'll describe it, well, it was like flashbacks for me, because I lived through that. I was a college student when the special editions came out, and right when I graduated is when the Phantom Menace came out. And so as a young adult, I was going through this and people starting to really criticize me for liking those films. And it was unhinged then. Now, I didn't go to the conventions. I didn't do, the hate conventions with the poetry readings and all that stuff about, I won't even say it on this podcast, but what he did to their childhoods. It was nostalgic in a bad way.
Yeah, it's one of the things I find interesting, though, is how it ultimately comes from a place of deep love. Which is
but so do stalkers, right? Like,
I mean, you're not wrong. How about you, Hammy?
I guess I come from a little bit of a different perspective. Obviously, I wasn't born. I mean, I was like 1.5 when like Revenge of the Sith came out, so I don't remember this. So it was really interesting, I guess, to see like the fan reaction, because like I didn't know it was even that bad. I was like, some of the stuff some people were saying, I'm like, I don't even know how you even came up with that. It's just a movie, I mean, no, it was really interesting. To see the fan reaction. I was just like fascinated of like, how could somebody get that frustrated over a movie? It's always been weird to me. I don't know. And then it was just weird. That's how I put it.
And for those of you that don't know, Hammy also has, he mentioned it briefly, but he has a podcast. I've gone on there a couple times, and we've always had great conversations. We, don't see eye to eye on certain things, but we still sharpen one another and have a great time talking. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you here, having a younger perspective, as well as Jay Kevin, who has an older perspective. I'm just fascinated to see how these all interweave to each other, But yeah. I mean, jumping straight into it, first, right off the bat, it just is like giving us the story of Star Wars and who George Lucas is and why he did what he did with it, and kind of the greatest hits thing. Very complimentary. Right when this jumps off, what comes out at you, J. Kev? I'll go to you first.
Sorry, I missed part of that. What?
Oh
Can
yeah,
you repeat the last part?
no worries. Just at the beginning of it, it's mostly talking about how George inspired the
Gotcha.
galaxy, inspired all
Yeah.
of us.
So much, fan films and all kinds of things. I mean, growing up, every kid did the fake lightsaber thing because we didn't have all this stuff that you guys have now. And I've got a couple of lightsabers that actually make noises. We had to make those with our mouths. Vroom, vroom. We did all of that stuff. I had like the Play-Doh toys that they can make the ships out of, and all that all kinds of toys and stuff. So the people were inspired. They made fan films. They made it like a part of their life. A bit codependent, maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's not even the right word, but they got a little too invested, I think, in terms of there was a break from reality. But I certainly spent a lot of time as a kid in Star Wars. So yeah, he's inspired a lot of filmmakers. I mean, a lot of those fan film makers became actual filmmakers, which is pretty cool. So.
Tons of people in the industry all have that same starting point of they watched this, they wanted to see how it was made, and started to try and make their own.
Right.
You're talking about people slightly losing touch. I can't help but think about that lady who has all the action figures in her room, and she's like, George Lucas took away my husband and my son.
Yeah, he made her buy all that stuff, right?
That was one of my favorite things ever.
The self-control lack of.
How about you, Hammy? Your thoughts on that, the opening?
I mean, I thought it was like, I always knew people were fascinated with Star Wars from a young age, but I was more so fascinated with like how obsessed people were with like what George did. Like this whole thing really focused on George's Star Wars, and it's just, I'm like, I understand the obsession over the movie, buying the toys. Obviously, it was a cultural phenomenon, but like at the same time, their love for George Lucas, and I think more so, like it was really odd to me, like how they kept talking about George's vision, but George's vision just changed. He wanted a different movie. He wanted to change some stuff. So it's like, why did you not like it then if you loved everything George did? It's really fascinating how they were obsessed with not just the film but the filmmaker itself.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the first times we saw like an actual filmmaker become that much larger than life. Because there were big filmmakers, Spielberg and stuff, at the time, but I don't see Spielberg having anywhere near that level of devotion. How about you, Brooke?
Yeah, what jumped out to me at first was not just talking about how it inspired like other aspiring filmmakers, but they said it just brings like all walks of life together. So whether you're an astronomer, an engineer, an artist, whatever, like you can imagine, they all can say that Star Wars inspired them to do what they are doing now in some way. So I thought that was really cool, because you don't think about those other jobs. I think the fan films are wild. I love them. The idea is great. Reminds me of like OG YouTube, before it became like people's careers and people are just doing it for fun. I thought one of the most interesting points of this whole documentary, but in the beginning too, is the discussion of who owns these, like this media. Who has ownership over this once a film is out? Does it still belong to the creators, or does it also belong to the consumers? And I think that's kind of an interesting discussion to have. And where do you draw the line between what's like respectful to the people that created that thing, and what's also going to still make the consumers that appreciate that thing happy?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that out. That was actually going to be the next thing I was going to talk about. Is where do you guys feel with that? If can Da Vinci pop out right now and make edits to the Mona Lisa? Would that be cool? Or like, what do you think? I'll start with Hammy for this one.
Well, I mean, I guess for me, I'm fine with whoever creates the project. Like in George's case, if he wanted to go back and edit the film and change it, I'm fine with that. I'm cool with that. But like at the same time, I think it's a fan's, responsibility. If they don't like a film, like they don't have to like they showed with the prequels and the Phantom Menace, they made like a whole edit of what they wanted to see. Like you can't just pull pieces out of a movie and stuff. I think as a fan myself, I understand where a director wants to go and like they should have their own vision. But at the same time, I think fans should have fun and create their own things, but understand that's not what the original creator's intention is if it's too drastic.
Yeah. And while we're talking about this subject, can I also get you to add your thoughts on what you saw in the documentary in regards to the special edition releases? Because that kind of was framed by the same discussion. You have any further thoughts on that, Hammy?
Yeah, I guess for me personally, I never saw the original Star Wars. I've grown up watching the special editions, so I never really noticed the changes. And yeah, some of them I know were like, I mean, I wouldn't say drastic, but like were different. And I was just, I was just surprised at the fan reaction from simple changes to a movie. It's some of it is not great. I'll admit that, but some of it added to the story, I think. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't really think it's enough to complain about anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it ruins everything. Although I feel like they did more good than harm personally. But Brooke, what are your thoughts? Who owns the art, and your thoughts on the special editions?
I feel like it's such a hard question to like answer. Where do you draw the line? Because I think it's almost unfair to compare it to someone like Da Vinci coming back and changing something, because the Mona Lisa was not like always regarded, like Da Vinci was not always regarded as this like amazing painter until long after he was gone. Whereas we get more instant gratification with film, at least now, like with Star Wars, it was almost immediately, it became like a phenomenon. So George Lucas was still very much alive and is still very much alive. So I think it's tough to compare it to something like that. As far as the like special edition stuff and kind of tying it all in, I feel like obviously George is the original creator of everything, and I believe he has the right to do whatever he wants if he thinks that it's going to make the movie better because he didn't have the budget for it, or they didn't have the technology to do what he wanted to do at that point. And I don't see a problem if it doesn't change the integrity of the film, if the story doesn't change. People were so mad about, in the beginning, they were like, oh, well, the 20th Century Fox logo was changed by like 20 frames. And like the original Star Wars thing that comes up, I'm like, why is that such a big deal to you? But because it does not change anything about the movie. The one thing I do kind of understand to a point is regarding the other creators, like the other people that worked on the film, especially when you talk about how Star Wars won Oscars for those things and then those things get changed. I do feel like it could be disrespectful to the other people that worked on the movie, because I was thinking about this earlier, comparing it to the last season of Game of Thrones, because it's not most people's favorite. I would never say that if you like it, that you're wrong. But then when you bring in like, petitions to change it or refilm it, or same with Star Wars, petitions to change it back to how it was or get a new thing, that is also disrespectful to everyone that worked on those projects. So it can almost be a double-edged sword in a sense.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that, and because there are good changes, there are bad changes, and there are, some people like victory celebration, some people like yub nub, It's all about it's whatever floats your boat. How about you, Jake?
Well, I happen to like both Victory Celebration and Yub Nub. I just wish I had the option to pick one, whichever one time I wanted to watch it. But I actually have a pretty cut and dry answer for this. Again, because I was in that era when it was happening, and some of my best friends and I really diverged on this topic. And so I'll give a parallel to those that maybe aren't familiar with it. That was actually happening around the same time as the prequels. And that's the Matrix Trilogy, which is actually my favorite film franchise, just barely above Star Wars and Marvel. The first Matrix came out, and everybody had their idea of exactly what that world was like. They had so many preconceived notions. And then 2 and 3 came out very soon after, and those were back-to-back, and then people hated them. They railed on them just like people did the prequels, just like people are now doing to the sequels. And they said it was all wrong. I'm like, you realize they're the creators of the first film, right? And it's their vision that they're now realizing in films 2 and 3. The Wachowskis did what they wanted to do, right? Like, how dare you? I mean, I didn't own it, so I didn't have like a personal stake in it. But, you know, I've created things, and I don't want people necessarily messing it up. Maybe not to that level. But imagine if you're a Taylor Swift fan and you don't like some of the things that she does with her music, and you say, you thought you had trouble with your back catalog before. I own all your music, and I get to decide what you do with it. You know, you can't change it. It's not yours anymore. I can't imagine telling that to a musician, to an artist. As long as you have the original, like if you bought the tapes, if you bought the special, you know, the laser discs or the DVDs, and you have those, guess what? He didn't reach into your house and change those. You still have them. So I never understood that backlash either. Like, it's just an updated version. You watch that one or you watch the one you like. I don't have the originals. I just wish I did. But most of the special edition stuff I also like. But Han shot first. All right, next.
No, that was actually going to be my lightning round question of who shot first. So we see where you're on at, J. Kev. How about you, Hammy and Brooke? Who shot first?
I guess I would say Han. 100%. So.
I feel like I'm pretty indifferent. Like, it's fun to say, like, oh, Han shot first, but I don't know if it necessarily changes that much about his character either way, because he still shot and killed Greedo. So I don't know. It is what it is.
No, I know how much of a hot button topic that was. Because I was young when this happened, but I remember that being the biggest thing. We got to see quite a bit of it. And how, oh man, this utterly ruins his character. Like, well, it doesn't ruin
That's over
it.
the top, man.
I mean, it's, if anything, it says more about Greedo missing from that short a distance. But
McClunky.
But yeah, I don't know. All right, so we heard lots and lots of things about the changes and stuff from the special editions. Some I like. I like having Ian McDermott Emperor in there.
Huge improvement.
Yeah, over the woman,
over the chimpanzee and the woman mixed together. Yeah,
it was weird before, and the voice was weird. Also, shout out to Ian McDermott for getting cast in that role like super young and then aging up to the appropriate age to play Palpatine again. That's weird. Yeah, that doesn't normally happen. But there are also scenes where a big dinosaur just walks in front of the camera, and you're like, I don't see what this adds. But okay. I don't know. But, you know, after that, everyone still has this deep love, and I'm not sure if Hammy will, but the hype surrounding the Phantom Menace, and when that first trailer dropped, of all the droids and stuff coming down over that foggy hill and all this stuff, that was hype. That was hype personified. You know, we had so much excitement for the prequels, and everyone's just like super stoked. It's on the news nationally. People are going to the movie theater just to see the preview and then going home, paying to see theater attendance shot up. What did he say? Like 1,200%, just for the trailer. So, and then they asked the question, well, what if it sucks? And then the documentary just kind of leaves that thought hanging out there. Now, I loved the prequels from the get-go. That's me. But I'll go to Hammy first. What'd you think of this part once the prequels came out?
I mean, obviously, I was just being born when I think Attack of the Clones was coming out, so I didn't experience it in the theater myself, but I've always heard about the reaction to the prequel trilogy, and it was really cool in this documentary how they showed it, how fans, it's so funny to me how high their expectations were, and I'm like, I couldn't imagine them like walking out of the movie theater after seeing The Phantom Menace. I mean, I like some parts of the movie, obviously, but to me personally, compared to the originals, it's kind of a downgrade, just in my opinion. But it was just really like fascinating to see their reactions. And some dudes were going like 13 or 14 times, like hoping one time it would hit, like one time it would be good for them. I'm like, like at some point you got to stop. Some point you got to, it's not going to be good after like 20 times. If you don't like it the first two, not going to like it. So it was just really crazy to see how passionate fans were, and then the reaction afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. The one guy is like, I saw it 13 times in theaters, but he hated it. Like, what is wrong with you? Element 7 always uses the example of like finding a piece of poop in a field, and you smell it and you're like, oh, that smells bad, but you just stay there and you keep smelling it and you're like, what? Stop it. I can't help you, Oh, how about you, Brooke?
Yeah, I was still a little young when The Phantom Menace came out. I think I was 5. So I don't quite... And I was not that into Star Wars growing up. It wasn't something my parents really showed me. I remember watching them on TV and stuff, but I can speak on being a child, watching the prequels. I at least remember watching The Phantom Menace at some point when I was maybe 6 or 7. I loved Jar Jar, so when they got to kind of the conversation between like, who are these movies for? Are they for the aging audience, or are they for this next generation of kids? And what's fair for the fans for the movies? I thought it was a very interesting, like, stark difference between the kids that were like, we love Jar Jar, he's hilarious, and the adults that were like, this is like literally the worst thing, like he is the devil reincarnate. There was someone that said Jar Jar was a cartoon character invading something I was taking seriously. That guy in that documentary that said that, I was like, okay, but this is still a movie with like aliens and space magic for children. And George has always said it's for children. And I think people get up in arms in that discussion. It literally does not matter if you are an adult and you like Star Wars. We, all 4 of us here, are adults, if not close to adults, talking about how much we love Star Wars. That doesn't mean that we can't enjoy it even if we're not the target audience. So I think that a lot of the hate that maybe the prequels get, and maybe even the sequels we can talk about too, is just people that just forget that, this isn't for you anymore, and you're never going to be as excited as you were when you saw it when you were a child, because you're not a child anymore. And I think people would build up the excitement in their heads when they saw the trailer, because the trailer reminds them of how they felt when they were a kid, but then they get to the actual movie and it's not going to give them the same experience.
Yeah, no, I like how you say that, because the trailer really does bring out that childhood wonder that you felt before My buddy Travis cried every single time he watched the Force Awakens trailer. Actually, all of them, but especially Force Awakens, because he was there with me at Star Wars Celebration. We watched it together. He cried. Watched it the next day. He cried. We kept watching it like in line, waiting for things. He cried every single time. I was like, dude, you want some water or something? Like, I know. I thought he was gonna be dehydrated personally. How about you, Jacob?
Well, when that trailer hit, man, I was super hyped. Like I said, I was just about to graduate from college as the trailer came out. I was in my senior year, and all of us were just taking up the entire university's limited, T1 line bandwidth internet to download that trailer with QuickTime, like 100 times on every computer we could find, and we just watch it, this little postage stamp size. But it was just so exciting to watch. And as soon as you started talking about the trailer, I started getting chills again because it was exciting. Now, I wasn't disappointed with it, and I wasn't disappointed with Jar Jar. Maybe I don't take it seriously enough like some of these true fans do, but I just thought Jar Jar was kind of funny. He was a comic relief. That's literally his purpose, or at least a big part of it. But when I started seeing these other people get really pressed about it, that's when, because I was a young adult, I had realized that, okay, a lot of us fell in love with Star Wars when we were kids, and we don't critically view that hardly ever. Most people don't ever look back at their childhood favorites and think, let me examine, the story structure and the, fight choreography and, just how well the writing was. We just, now that we're older, we're a little more aware. Maybe we've taken a literature class or two, and then we start to get frustrated with the new films because suddenly they don't meet our expectations. But because our brains have developed, hopefully, right? But for me, I started looking back at the original trilogy, and I thought, well, it's not perfect. And then that was it. And I've never not loved it. I just realized, hey, it's not perfect. I can move on. Some valid criticisms, but, Star Wars is Star Wars. It's always meant for kids. Relax about it. That's kind of my take on it. These adults that don't really grow up, they get so worked up. It's the same thing. Okay, Clone Wars versus Rebels. A lot of kids fell in love with the Clone Wars. Then they grew up, and then Rebels came out. Oh, it's not what I'm used to, so it sucks. It's actually not that different, but, a lot of the same people worked on both shows. A lot of the styles are similar, but it's just because you were a kid when the first one came out. A lot of people hated the Clone Wars when it came out. I took my kids to the movie in 2008 and have been a fan ever since. But people were mad about that then, who were already adults.
I hated it when it first came out. But
I didn't love it. I thought, okay, my kids love it because I saw the wonder on their faces. I had that advantage that I had young kids at the time. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to ruin it for them. And then, so I relaxed about it. And then I've liked it ever since then.
Yeah. When the Clone Wars came out, I didn't like the art style because everyone was like tall and skinny and super angular. And it's funny because I hear that complaint about Rebels now. And as you watch this documentary, you just see it's the same exact criticisms, word for word, from each group. Mm-hmm. And it's just really humorous watching it move forward. One of the things that struck me is there was the person that Broke was talking about when he was like, Jar Jar is the least funny thing to have ever existed, and there was a whole medley of people like burning Jar Jar toys, throwing him off bridges, doing CGI Jar Jars dying and stuff like that.
Like they do Rey right now, unfortunately, and Rose.
It's fascinating because it was worse back then because the tools weren't available to easily do any of this stuff. You had to, if people who wanted, you would have to making a CGI Jar Jar on your own at that time period is insane. That's countless hours of I hate this thing. Oh, I'm gonna code this so good.
Yeah. It reminds me of like when people get mad at their favorite athletes for leaving their team or whatever, and then burning their jerseys. Like you're wasting your own money and time doing this. What's the point?
I kick myself because I didn't invest into Nike before people started burning Nike shoes for Colin Kaepernick, because people started. They saw a huge surge in purchases because people would buy shoes to burn them, and you're like, you realize no one, you bought it, they got the money, they're done. I don't know. But yeah, and so but right after that part, they interviewed like these kids, and all the children are like, I like Jar Jar, he's super funny. And there's the adult was talking about like, this is weird for me because, for my kid growing up, there's 6 movies for him, and he views them all as one story, versus what to him at the time, what it truly is 3 movies and like these other things. And once again, it's just something that just kind of repeats itself.
Yeah, when that one guy was like, the numbers 1, 2, 3 don't exist in my universe. Like, what? Are you really that petty? Anyway.
Yeah, and we also got a bunch of different fan edits. I have to say though, my favorite thing though is the people that split up the original Star Wars film into, what was it, like 20-second bites or something like that, and different people like acted out those parts and they made one big fan film. Super cool, super ingenious, super creative things like that kind of got sparked from it. But then we also have people who, I made my version of the Phantom Menace. It was in like black and white, and they changed the aspect ratio to 4:3. And I was like, oh my god, this is 2010. They didn't know the Snyder Cut was happening. They're just I mean, what do you guys think about all the fan created projects? I guess I will go to I started with Hammy last time, so we'll start with Brooke.
I think the fan films that are in support of that media is always cool. I loved that the guy who was helping organize it said there's like 400 something different clips, and they were all getting taken up by people who wanted to be a part of it. So I think stuff like that is cool. I even think like fun, like parodies are cool, because Star Wars is campy, Star Wars is corny, and you got to make fun of it a little bit. Like, not just like Spaceballs, but like the fan stuff that you make. You got to make fun of the stuff that you love a little bit, but not in a way that's completely disrespectful to the original source material. So people that are editing things the way that they think it should be, I'm like, okay, but where's your film credits? Where's your film degree? Like, what's your experience that determines what is good and what's not? And I think there's a line where it's just not fun, especially back before like social media and YouTube were huge. Like now people do that stuff for internet clout, for clicks and views, but back then they were just legitimately doing it because they hated it that much.
Yeah, definitely. Your thoughts on it, Jacob?
So my favorite projects were always the ones that just like extended it. So Troops is my absolute favorite of all those original parodies. It wasn't really a parody, but it was like what really happened at the Lars Ranch, and it had like the Mystery Science Theater 3000. I forget which droid name that was, but like the gumball machine, and the Jawas fighting and everything, and then they end up shooting Aunt Beru, and it's like something about their son Duke. It just that whole. I also downloaded that, took up the whole university bandwidth for a while, but just that edit was incredible. I actually like the professional fan films, which are like not Family Guys so much, but like Robot Chicken and like even Phineas and Ferb and some of these I think are hilarious, but they're all homages to that as well. Even Spaceballs, the fact that George Lucas was around a lot for the filming of Spaceballs, and Industrial Light and Magic did a lot of the effects for Spaceballs. I thought was really cool. He thought it was fun and funny, right? Although he didn't let him sell merch, which was why that whole joke with yogurt about merchandising, which is even funnier. But yeah, but some of the there wasn't like YouTube back then. It was the early days of YouTube with the prequels. But like in my era, there wasn't anything like that. So you just like maybe had VHS tapes or whatever, people's fan edits, and they didn't get spread very widely. The internet's helped do that a lot. It's actually people have made individual careers out of their Star Wars edits. So that's interesting to me. It's something I actually would like to do more of. But to say I don't like it, so I'm going to go make a fan edit, this is the way it should have been, I think is pretty damn arrogant. Just my opinion.
No, I can see that. Because there's one is a labor of love, and the other is I don't know what you.
Well, like the memes, right? Like we can take any part of Star Wars and make funny memes out of it, and I think that's fine. Those are jokes, good times. But it's the attitude that comes with it, right? Like, is it out of anger and like you think you know more than the creator, or is it I'm just having fun with Jar Jar doing X, Y, or Z, or hello there memes or whatever it is, which I think are funny.
Yeah. The fan project though, when they were doing Indiana Jones and the kids are like lighting themselves on fire and stuff in the basement.
When they said gasoline instead of alcohol, I was legitimately concerned. I thought, is there going to be like a graphic content warning? Because that's not how that works.
And it's in a basement. It's not properly.
Right. I'm glad he survived. At least I hope he did.
They're getting dragged behind a car.
Those screams seem really real, though. Just saying.
I was a bold kid. I was nothing like that. But how about you, Hammy?
I guess for me personally, I love like the grainy fan films that are just filmed in the backyard, because it kind of reminds me of when I was even younger, and you would go outside, you'd have your toy lightsaber, and you'd play with your little cousin, or you'd play with your friends. So I always like the more realistic ones, the ones in the backyards and stuff. So I've always been a big fan. But like what you guys were saying, I think it's the intent behind it. If you're making it out of love, that's awesome. But if you're making it out of hate, I just question like your life and I guess your lifestyles. So yeah, I love fan films. I'd love to see what people think, and they're making out of love, passion for a franchise. So it's always been really cool to see what people come up with, and they spend a lot of time on it, so they obviously really care.
Yeah. I love Julie Christine's comment, the real prequels were the friends we made along the way. Which is funny because I've met all of you guys through our shared love of Star Wars. I've made so many lifelong friends. I don't know, it's fascinating. I think this is a really fascinating study. All right, so my next question for everyone is, as we're kind of going through this, and again, this was 2010. This film was made prior to George Lucas selling. Actually, that's a better question to start with. After watching this film, what do you think about George Lucas selling the franchise? If there is any influence there, that's where I'll start with Jacob.
Hell yeah, there was influence. Excuse me, but the guy was being bombarded all the time. A lot of the internet grew as a way to hate George Lucas, and like forums sprung up all over the place, and were just filled with these angry fanboys crying about how their childhood was ruined. I mean, there are corners of the internet I decided not to lurk in anymore because of that garbage. YouTube, for instance, there's a lot of time I didn't spend on certain channels of YouTube and even searches and whatnot, because I'm like, I can't take this depressing fanboyism or whatever. Yeah, I think George got frustrated. And in fact, you can hear it in his interviews when he actually brings up about, yeah, well, the fans will hate it, but I'm still going to make it my way. I mean, they get mad at him for saying that, but it's his stuff. we're living in his world in that sense. The guy was bullied so much, and all the stuff they're doing to Kathleen Kennedy now. I mean, yes, add to the fact that they try to throw on political agendas on her because she's a woman that they didn't throw on to George Lucas. But a lot of that hate was the same kind of hate that he got, and I know he had to really, give her some advice on, well, you probably just need to retire from public life forever and never come back outside, and they're going to hate you. Here's the company. Like, that's the way I imagine that conversation going. So, yeah, he just wanted to focus on family and not being, giving death threats and that kind of thing.
So, and just as a follow up, do you think that how do I word it? Because George, was relentlessly pursuing his vision, right? Do you think he should have done that? Do you think he should have been taking advice from other people throughout each film, or taking public criticism throughout it? How do you think that works?
If he had done that, then we wouldn't have any of what we have today. Like, it probably wouldn't have even made out the first film, or if it did, it wouldn't have gone to a sequel after, Star Wars in 1977, because he decided right then and there with Fox he was done taking any crap from anybody. He was going to do it his own way. And then we got that original trilogy, very much his vision, not all of it, not 100%, but very close to it as we got toward, to the teddy bears that everybody hated when I was a kid. And I love the Ewoks. And that's another thing. I'm still like, why did y'all have to make fun of me about the Ewoks? But no, Stormtroopers are better. Like, anyway, sorry, flashbacks. But yeah, like this whole idea that he should have been listening to the fans all along. Well, then we wouldn't have gotten any of what you love to begin with. So, I mean, maybe, like, I certainly have listened to, I've changed some of the ways I do my TikTok stream now, and what days I'll focus on replying to these fanboys, for instance, because some people said, hey, maybe, don't do that so much. And I've taken that to heart. So I think there's some that you could do as a creator, like George Lucas could have done. But I mean, his whole thing is he reshaped Hollywood by not listening to what everybody else said. That's my view on that.
Yeah, and how about you, Hammy?
Well, as a creator, I think it's definitely fair to take public criticism, but at the same time, you shouldn't be reactionary. You shouldn't just fully listen to the fans. You should obviously take criticism, but not react always. And I give credit to George because it was his vision. No matter what, it was always going to be his story. And yeah, I definitely think the fans pushed him out. He didn't want to do it. I think he lost his love for, I think he still loves the films he made, obviously, but he just lost his passion for it. I mean, there's really no sense in working on something that people are going to trash on. And those are the loudest people, sadly, the people that trash on it. So he didn't want to do it anymore. And I don't blame him. I really don't.
No. And just to answer Cad Bane in the chat when he says no one likes the Ewoks, I love the Ewoks, and
bro, I love the Ewoks. They're awesome.
And I get that you wish there was Wookiees on Endor instead, but there's not enough people above 7 feet tall to make that work. And also a bear. They are bears. A bear is stronger than a human, and if a bear has a spear and can set traps, we are all screwed. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and Wookiees was the original vision George had, right? But he had already established them as having, very sophisticated brains that could fly ships because of Chewbacca. And so then it didn't make sense to suddenly they're this primitive culture. Yeah. So he just flipped Wookiee, made it Ewok, and then made them short. And they're still hairy. So it's not that big a difference. Come on, guys. And they're cute.
Some of them. Some of them are terrifying.
Pretty terrifying, yeah. When they're tying you up and lighting a fire under you, I imagine.
Also, if you've played Ewok Hunt, it's not for the faint of heart. How about you, Brooke? Your thoughts on it?
I definitely think there is an influence in the response to that led to George selling Lucasfilm. I understand as a creator, as a filmmaker, you should expect criticism from the people that consume your media, but watching this documentary and seeing how people react to the sequels today and how absolutely personally people take it to the point where they forget about anything but their own feelings and just project to like destroy the lives of George Lucas and even like the actors that were involved in these movies who had no creative control over what they were doing. There's a lot of just like ignorance, I guess, if you will, and just lack of any sort of empathy whatsoever. So I don't blame him at all for wanting to leave or retire or whatever. I think maybe part of it too was because of the explosion of Star Wars. He also probably felt like he couldn't move on from it, because even in the documentary he said it took over my entire life. I didn't want to become a businessman, but here I am now running a business that is almost solely Star Wars stuff. So I think there was definitely elements of everything that influenced him to leave. And I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to say. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, now we do have an example of unfettered George brain. And it was brought up in the chat by Zblad. We have the holiday special. Curious your guys' thoughts on the holiday special. Hammy, have you seen it?
Yeah, I have seen it. I always find George's comment where he says, "If I had the chance, I'd smash every single one." I've always found that so funny. Yeah, it's interesting. That's all I'll say. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's like George. I think George obviously hates that side of Star Wars, but yeah, that's my favorite George Lucas quote. If I had a chance, I'd smash them all.
Brooke, holiday special?
I have actually not seen it all the way through. I've only seen clips. And from what I've heard from people, it does sound absolutely ridiculous, but I also don't think it deserves the outrage that it gets, because it's literally just... It is what it is. I will say, going back to George... I like that he didn't want to be kind of controlled by like an overarching corporation, but I think that there could have been some sort of balance between having other creatives there that were kind of able to keep him in check, or whatever you want to call it, for the prequels, because George is such a great visionary. He is a great storyteller. But to be honest, like, at least in my opinion, the movies that he didn't direct are better than the ones that he did. Because I don't know if I don't have any directing experience, so I have, like, almost no room to talk. But I feel like having other people to collaborate with and having him kind of leave the story elements to him seemed more beneficial. Like, giving a different director to like Empire and Return of the Jedi, I think, strengthened those movies. I would have been interested to see how they would have turned out if he had handled everything himself with those as well. But yeah,
it's interesting that you put it that way, because like even with the original trilogy, tonally, Empire Strikes Back is way, way different than the other films. But that was Lawrence Kasdan, and it was a very small, very personal film, which is what I love. So, yeah, there's definitely some leeway in having an unfettered vision, but I have Harrison in the chat saying, I may have gone too far in a few places, which George Lucas says while in the documentary for The Phantom Menace. California says, it's definitely a fever dream experience. Julie Christine, I thought the holiday special was a meme or made up inside joke for way too long. Brian with the beard says it was an instant classic, and Star Wars lawyer Chris says there is no holiday special in Ba Sing Se. I don't know if you guys watch Avatar, but and yeah, it's certainly wild. How about you, JCav? Do you remember seeing it?
So I don't think I actually saw it as a kid. I think I would have remembered that. I've certainly seen it since. I don't know how I would have missed it. I mean, there might have been a football game on or something, but in terms of whether or not George Lucas even had a lot of say in it, I can't. Don't quote me on this, but last I heard, or what I thought I saw in a documentary, was that was the studio pushing that because they didn't want to wait 3 years for the next thing to come out because suddenly they saw all the money from Star Wars. And so they're like, hey, let's put this thing out on TV. It'll be great. We'll sell more toys, and we'll get B. Arthur to sing. One of the best parts, by the way, actually. So,
one more round, friends.
That's right. I could do without the Wookiee VR porn, but then there's the rest of it that was, the animation was good. I mean, we got Boba Fett out of it. That's where they started selling those toys, and yeah. So I'm glad it's not canon. Let's put it that way. I'm really glad it's not canon, but it's part of it's culture. Like, it happened. It's a pop culture phenomenon in that sense, and people couldn't get enough Star Wars already. So,
yeah, I mean,
I like what Brooke said about the directors, though, and I think it's hilarious in a sad way that people gripe about how the sequels had 2 directors, and that's why they're bad. Like, bruh, the originals had 3 directors, and it was amazing, but people didn't think so at the time because they were so tonally different. I remember even as a kid, Empire Strikes Back freaked me out a bit. It was a long time before I saw that as a really good film because Yoda freaked me out. It ended on a bad note. It was like, this is not how these movies are supposed to end. This is a guy lost his arm and found out that was his dad, and boom, and that's not how that's supposed to go. That freaked me out as a young guy. And then
the scene where Yoda goes, or when Luke goes, I'm not afraid, and he goes, you will be. As a little kid, I was like, oh,
dude.
no.
And my parents bought me a Yoda shampoo bottle, and so I had to stare at that thing in the bathtub as a kid. I want out, Mom. Sorry, nightmares. But yeah, it was scary. But the original, the prequels, when he directed them by himself, that was one of the big, I think, valid criticisms of the prequels, was that he wrote it and he directed it and he did everything himself because he didn't want anybody to have any say in it. But you also didn't have Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford and others pushing back and rewriting the dialogue for him, because all the actors then were like, oh, this is George Lucas, we'll just do whatever he says. And it nearly ruined Natalie Portman's career. She's been on record of saying that because of the way people reacted to the films. It certainly ruined a few of the male actors' careers, like young Jake Lloyd and Ahmed Best and others, even poor Anakin Skywalker himself. I'm glad he's coming back. I'm glad we're getting Hayden back in this Kenobi series coming up. But it just, maybe if he had some creative collaboration, it might not have been so bad. I don't know. But people are going to hate Star Wars. Every time there's new Star Wars, people hate it. Damn it. It doesn't matter what he does or what Kathleen does or what J.J. Abrams does. People are going to hate it. Some people.
Yeah. No,
I'm going to love it. I love all of it. I'm a fanboy.
Speaking of which, I guess the next question I want to ask is, what criticisms did you notice popping off that you see happening right now? Because there's quite a few that were word for word, So what criticisms that are happening now did you see in this about past things? And also, do you remember what they were saying those about? And I don't recall who I started with, so I am going to go to Brooke first.
One of the things, some of the criticisms that I was hearing was beat for beat what we hear now. The one that got me watching was when they brought up the midichlorians, because I know a lot of people did not like that at all, but hearing that someone was like, oh, these movies are ruining what we knew about the Force, I feel like we've heard that about the sequels as well. It's just like the way that the rhetoric is exactly the same is mind-blowing. I'm like, are these the same people, or are these parents teaching it to their kids and then those kids are saying the same things? It's just wild how some of it is like word for word the same.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Jacob?
It's bad writing. I heard that a lot. That's said of both trilogies. It's XYZ force power ruins the Force, ruins lore. The Force sprint, for instance, in the Phantom Menace that we never saw again, which I'm like, bro, that would have been really handy when you were trying to save your master from Maul. I'm just saying, but no, I'm just gonna regular sprint this one. But that's okay. It didn't bother me because the story needed them to do the things that they did, and I get that. But the people who criticize both, like so many of the criticisms, like Jar Jar's the worst character ever, Rey's the worst character ever. I'm like, okay, but there's a little more to it than that. Rey wasn't just a side character for comic relief either. So, there was, these certain battles that didn't work. The choreography was terrible. I heard that the choreography was terrible, the prequels, and now I'm hearing the same thing about the sequels by people who defend to the death every move of the choreography of the prequel trilogy. Like, so it's just interesting to me to see that kind of switch from people. Of course, it's a new generation that's come up, and their parents were the ones that hated the prequels, and now they're the ones that hate the sequels. So it's just almost every criticism I've heard, I've said, Disney only cares about making money with toys. Well, guess what? Kurtz.
It's
He's
Kurtz.
the producer, right? Kurtz left
Kurtz.
the original trilogy after Empire because he said, well, George Lucas cares more about toy sales than he does about story in 1980. So if you think that's not fair of George Lucas, how is it fair of Disney? Or vice versa. Like, if you're going to make this criticism, the sequels lost money. Like, by the time they made the third film, it lost a lot of money compared to the first film. All three trilogies had that phenomenon. People got bored by the third movie. If you look at it, not even counting for inflation, just numbers. If you look at the box office, it's significantly lower, Return of the Jedi from the first Star Wars. I'm not talking about all the re-releases. I'm talking about the initial release. Revenge of the Sith was significantly lower than The Phantom Menace. The same thing happened with the sequel. So how is that a valid criticism? Anyway, sorry, I get worked up about this stuff.
No.
I've been hearing it for decades.
It really frames why I just kind of laugh about certain things that I hear of, like, I mean, it's just objectively a bad film. And you're like, that's what they. You're saying the same
how
thing.
those words work.
I was laughing out loud. Of course, I had to have my microphone muted because Hammy was calling out things that they were going to say. Of like, when are they going to say this? I'm like, oh boy, they're about to. Hammy, your thoughts on it?
I guess the one they didn't touch on it a lot, but the criticisms of young Anakin. I mean, it's very beat for beat what they did for Rey. Now it's really just fascinating how it's almost like a trend in the Star Wars community when there's a new main character to just hate on him and just compare him to Luke Skywalker. Now, Luke's one of my favorite characters, and it's hard to kind of play up to that, but like you don't have to compare him to Luke. They're their own character. They serve the purpose in their own story, and I guess it's just been really interesting to hear your guys' perspectives, because I didn't grow up I watched the prequels as a kid, but I didn't grow up with the hate, and now I'm starting to see like, younger people are like falling in the same trap as these fans did in the past, and it's just it's really fascinating how like it's never going to stop. It's probably never going to stop, but I guess we try to do damage control, and the less people who do it, the better.
And the more people who are aware of it, the healthier the fandom can be, in my opinion. And that's the whole reason I try to bring this stuff up, because honestly, I feel for the very first time ever, it's possible to break the cycle. I honestly feel that could happen now. My thought process is that for a lot of people, this is a foundational block. If you watched this for the first time as a child or as a preteen, something like that, this helped you make sense of the world around you, which is what fiction does. This is why comic books, and I honestly believe that comic books, Star Wars, superhero movies are the most important genres for the future, because it helps shape the morality of young people today in a way that's almost religious. And the reason that we're unable to fully criticize the stuff that grew up with is because that became a foundational block, and we're building on top of that block. And if you move this block, I mean, if you play Jenga, like, we don't look at this block, like, don't. And but right now we are in a unique position where we can potentially get enough Star Wars content that, rather than the only new content we get be made for the next generation, we can get stuff that's made for us, some that's made for them, some that's made for the following generation. There's also this, like, oh, don't make Star Wars political, even though it's Star Wars. But there can be content that is created with people on both sides in mind, or with one side in mind and with the other side in mind, and you don't have to wish that side didn't have any content. That's weird. But I do think that we actually have the chance to get there. Unlike George Lucas, who, in all honesty, he did care. It did hurt him, the reaction, deeply. But I feel like, I mean, let me ask you guys this question. Do you think the direction and things of the sequels were meant to directly correct the backlash from the prequels? We'll go to Hammy first.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think with The Force Awakens specifically, they wanted to recapture fans with a movie similar to A New Hope. A lot of people compare it to that movie. So I definitely think that partly, I've come to enjoy the sequels more. Now, I was a toxic fanboy once too. So, we all come around at some point. But yeah, I just think, at this, the sequel trilogy tried to mirror the original trilogy. And I think, I think some prequel fans were disappointed with that because, they love that side of Star Wars. But I think Disney saw the backlash from the prequels and were like, oh, we have to go with something kind of similar to the storyline of the original trilogy. So I'm not saying this is a direct copy, but they try to mirror that story that we got, with George and stuff.
Yeah, they definitely, I mean, they did that intentionally. In the book, Bob Iger's book, Ride of a Lifetime, he specifically talks about, yes, we wanted to try and do something to capture the old fans. And that was on their menu, and that's one of the things that Bob Iger felt hurt George Lucas. It's funny because people quote like, "Oh, George Lucas felt betrayed. George Lucas felt betrayed." And all this. George Lucas actually never said that. Bob Iger said that he thinks that George Lucas felt betrayed. Like, this is all framed from a whole different perspective. Great
I think
book.
that was a misstep too. The way he said that probably didn't do Disney any favors.
But you can't know until you do it. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, one of the big complaints about the prequels was there's so much politics, talking about trade tariffs and all this stuff. No one cares. It's boring. So they don't do it. And everyone's like, I don't know what's happening. What's going on in the universe? And they're like, okay.
You never saw the New Republic.
Here's what we'll do. So that we don't bore them, we're not going to talk about this in the movie. But we'll release other things that have this information. And that's why all of these movies had Journey 2 books. To kind of explain things that were going on. You shouldn't have to read the book to understand what's going on. And you're like, I felt like that scene in The Notebook. What do you want? What do you want? it's not that simple. Just, what do you want? I don't know. Brooke, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I certainly think that it was probably the right decision to make to try to bridge the new fans with the old fans and try to appeal to both of them. And I want to say I feel for the most part that The Force Awakens accomplished that. At least people that liked the originals and may not have liked the prequels still got excited for the new movies. Whether they liked them or not, they probably still went to see them. I feel like they wanted to appeal to because it seemed like more like the original trilogy fans were hating on the prequel fans. So the prequel fans were the ones that liked the prequels, and they were already more likely to go see the new movies. I also think maybe because of the backlash the prequels got, they wanted to try to like bring the energy of the original trilogy back, which seems. I mean, I don't know what decision I would have made if I was in charge. I feel like the big thing that differs from like Star Wars versus like Marvel now and these other franchises is that there was so much time in between the trilogies for a lot of waiting and a lot of anticipation buildup, or a lot of even like falling off of the train of the fandom because until Disney bought Star Wars, it was like, okay, well, we're never going to get new stuff. And now with like the MCU, they've been pumping content out every year for the last over 10 years. So I think that's why that maybe they don't get the same kind of level of criticism compared to Star Wars. So I'm hoping that with the new Disney Plus content coming more often with Star Wars, hopefully it'll put that in kind of the same direction. We'll see though.
Yeah, I'll bet money though that we're actually about to see that criticism start to happen for Marvel. And I mostly say that because all of Marvel's stuff was created for a singular generation. It's all being made for the same group, and there's this overarching story for these group of people. We just entered a new phase where they have to redo all of that stuff from the beginning. Now, I think they've been doing an awesome job so far. Mm-hmm. I've also started to see more criticism start. That it's, either certain things lack depth, or the portrayal of like racism or existence of women is too on the nose or something. I don't know.
Existence of women. That's exactly right. As soon as a couple of women get in charge and get power, no, that's not realistic. What's realistic in these movies besides the racism and the sexism? Because that is realistic. Anyway, sorry.
But we'll see. Only time will tell. I do believe that we are in this weird new pocket where we could potentially break the cycle, because the whole movie, film, entertainment industry is having a monumental shift that was accelerated by 6 years with COVID. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the movies were going to die at some movie theaters as a concept. Did not have 1 million showings of 1 million movies in the past. There was only a few movies, and they got more and more and more and more. And now they're dying. I believe COVID accelerated that death by like 5 to 6 years, in my estimation. But I don't know. We'll see. Jacob, your thoughts? And I apologize because I can't remember how we got here.
Yeah, I can't either. I was thinking, though, back to your question about the things that may be paralleled between criticisms of the different trilogies, and something else that came up. I think Hammy had brought up about young Anakin and the way he was criticized. Mm-hmm. A lot of that in the prequel era, as I was listening to my friends, and not so much my friends, because I had cool friends, but like the other people around us our age that were just angry all the time. They said it ruined Anakin's character. Darth Vader's character. Anakin in the prequels ruined Darth Vader's character in the originals. And then now we've seen, the sequels ruined Luke's character from the originals. And so there's also a parallel there because of people's perception of who that is. And some of the biggest Star Wars creators out there, I think, get Luke completely wrong. I think they don't understand really his motivations in the beginning, and they're not old enough. You all are younger than me, and you hopefully know I'm not criticizing your age. Having lived longer, though, I see more of Luke's perspective than I could have at 18 or 20 years old. So don't hear that as a criticism. I would like to be 10 years younger physically, but the whole thing is that people change over time, and you're right. There was a huge gap between the trilogies. A lot of stuff happened. And this other one, we shouldn't have to read books. Literally from the beginning, Star Wars has had books, and that was the only way that people knew things like Sith and Palpatine and Ewok and Wicket. Like these are things that, or T-16 Skyhopper having the same controls as an X-Wing. They always use that to say, well, that's why Luke could fly, but Rey can't. Well, it was in a book. Well, guess what? So was the stuff about Luke and why he could fly the thing, because the controls were the same. They didn't say that in the movie. It wasn't even close to addressed in the movie. These are the things that frustrate me when I hear these criticisms, and I'm like, I'm not trying to tell you to like the sequels or the prequels or any of it. Just step back for a second, take a deep breath, and get some freaking perspective. That's all I want people to do. Just think about it a little bit.
It's easy to use the information that you have and forget where you got it. It's very, very easy. I see it all the freaking time.
And then Dunning-Kruger sets in, right? Like this idea that, well, I know all this stuff because it's simple to me, but that doesn't make sense, so it can't be good. So, like, I don't relate to Rey's character, for instance. So it must be written badly. It's bad. I'm gonna keep doing my little quotes, but I'll save that for my TikToks. It just frustrates me to no end because I have lived more life than a lot of these kids who don't. They could have. There are a lot of 17-year-olds that have lived a ton of life and can just run circles around me in terms of interpretation. It's not about age. It's just about perspective. If they could open their eyes a little bit, look at the world around them, they have an opportunity to learn some perspective. Like I've mentioned today to some folks about the Marvel show that we're watching, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and the whole thing with the racism. Good. If you don't recognize it as a problem and you think it's forced, then maybe look outside your little community. This is an opportunity. Marvel's handing you, and Star Wars does this with politics and other things all the time. Like, they're handing you this story that's entertaining, that gives you some perspective that you've never had before. And now there are people on TikTok. You have social media, people talking about their relation to that perspective, whether it's, finally seeing female characters that are heroes, finally seeing people of color that are heroes, and so on. Listen to them. You have an opportunity. So, like, my kids, definitely, they go on there and they listen, they hear me. They don't have a lot of these same issues because I've purposefully exposed them to some of these ideas. And it's not, the world doesn't revolve around you. Like that one, I know we're not on a Marvel podcast, but like the Ancient One, when she says to Stephen Strange, it's not about you. That quote, I think, could solve a lot of problems with every fandom out there if people just got that message.
And no, you're dead
right. It's
not
only about you. I mean, it is partly about us, but it's not only about us.
No, you're dead right. And also, next time I do a Marvel one, I'll definitely have you on as well. But that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on this conversation, because, I mean, you remember all this stuff happening, better than myself. Also, I low-key wanted to encourage you to get this documentary because I know you can cut certain bits and pieces and make some awesome content from it. Hopefully we'll
I've been meaning to do that, so I appreciate the nudge. I really should have all this time, so it's coming.
But there's this kind of weird thought that I see everywhere where we've set up these patterns, we've recognized what we believe to be a pattern from this to this to this, and then we get new information, and this new information breaks our pattern. It's one of two possibilities. Either this is wrong, or maybe what we thought was the pattern is incorrect. We need to be able to hold both of those possibilities in our mind at the same time and truly examine them. Maybe what I thought was a thing isn't true here. Jacob, you have something?
Yeah, so this is an epistemological problem. I know that's a big, $40,000 word, but the idea of how we view knowledge and how we view this information, what you said, I've done a couple of TikToks back months ago about this, and I should start doing it again. Like the dots that look like it could be circles, or it could be stars, or it could be all these different things. But when you get new bits of information, does that inform your picture? Or maybe it's a three-dimensional picture and you're living in flatland and it's a sphere that's coming in, right? So there's, like when people say that Ray's character has no depth, it's flat. No, you're flat and it's not. Like you just can't see it because of your perspective. If you expand your perspective a little bit, you might be able to see more depth.
Yeah.
There's definitely some more of those TikToks that are coming too, because epistemology is one of my big subjects that I love. I studied some in college. That's a branch of philosophy for those that you don't know. It's about the theory of knowledge and so on. So,
and I'm going to have to take a moment and say, damn it, because I was expecting Plato's allegory of the cave from you. But
that's definitely part of it. Like being able to see more clearly now. You're right. I was kind of alluding to that, so I'm glad that you brought it up. Are you tied up and seeing just shadows dancing on a wall versus I can now go out in the real world, but now your eyes are hurting because you've never really used them before, to use Morpheus's words. So that's why I love the Matrix so much, man. Yeah. There's so much of that philosophy in the Matrix. I get chills thinking about it.
I love thinking about thinking, which is weird, but yeah.
No, it's not weird. I mean, it is, but I appreciate it.
But I mean, obviously, yeah, this isn't a Marvel show, but in episode 2 of Falcon and Winter Soldier, when the cop car pulls up on Falcon and Bucky, and I kept seeing people like, oh, this feels forced, like, oh, that wouldn't happen. That's happened to me several times. I've walked from my own house to my own car, and I've had cops on adjacent streets slam on their brakes, reverse up that street, turn in, flash their lights, no siren, turn on their lights, make a U-turn behind my car, and I'm like...
I'm sorry that happens.
Sam's reaction is perfect, where you're just like... you're not even mad, you're just irritated, because this has just always been how it is. You're just like, oh.
And he was already worked up from the discussion that they were having that got their attention in the first place. And he did nothing wrong. And that's why these shows and these fictional universes are so important, because they help you see issues that maybe you don't see every day. You see that one often, and I'm sorry that that's a real reality for you. I wish everyone understood that it was, and maybe we could make that less of a reality someday. That's kind of what I would like to see from this.
So I spent a lot of time in, I guess not Southern Oregon, Middle Oregon, like Canby, Oregon City, that type of stuff. I literally moved out of the state of Oregon because of how often I was harassed by the police. That's why I left the state. So it's a real thing. But people who have never experienced will look at it and be like, "Oh, they're reaching. That's pushing an agenda." And you're like, you call it an agenda. I call it Tuesday. I was between 3 and 5 weeks. I would be pulled over for no reason for
definitely-
years. 3 and 5 weeks. Years. Go ahead, Brooke.
I would say it definitely is like about your experience because, obviously, I do not experience anything like that, but I did live in Baltimore, and I saw it, and where that scene was supposed to be, that's absolutely an exact exchange that I've seen happen before. So to say it's forced is just rude.
Same thing with these female characters. Like, oh, Rey was forced. I'm sorry, but we had 25 or 27 years of only male protagonists, main protagonists, until we got Rey, and then we got Jin, and then we've gotten, we're about to get Ahsoka finally as a protagonist, the main hero. But how is that forced? I've never not had somebody that looked like me as a hero. I don't care if there's ever another white man that's the hero of anything that I watch, because I've had more than enough for my lifetime. I'm tired of people acting like, well, they've got to protect that. I've seen some of these toxic sites talk about, oh, no, Disney and Marvel, they're not going to have any more white men. Like, I don't care. I mean, that's not true, but I don't care. Like, why are you so pressed? You have, decades and decades of back catalog that look just like you. Go watch them.
Yeah. And sorry, it looked like you were going to say something, Hammy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was gonna say, it's just like, the problem I have with it is, like, why do you have to complain on the internet? If you don't like it, just don't watch it. It's just, everybody complains about cancel culture. I think the bigger one is outrage culture. Why do you feel the need to get on the internet and, like, just complain about it? If you don't like it, just don't watch. Like, for example, the High Republic, they just announced a trans non-binary character, and I saw somebody on TikTok complain about it. I was going to make a video and I was going to say, have you even read like a book, like a High Republic book yet? You weren't even going to read it anyways, so why do you care? You just, like, are you going to virtue signal to your audience? Or like, what's the whole point of making a video if you weren't going to, like, partake in the product anyways? Like, it's really weird. I don't, like, listen sometimes, like, get different perspectives, and, if you're not going to participate in something or you don't like something, just don't watch it. Don't do it.
The funniest thing, because I've been laughing about some of the High Republic coverage myself, because that character, and I say that character because it's essentially two beings that share one brain, they share one consciousness between two physical bodies, and they're an alien species. How does what they identify? First of all, how could they identify with anything terrestrial? and that's the most interesting thing about them, And it's, but yeah, I always liken it to when you're driving on the freeway, and there's a bunch of space for you to get over. And the car back there speeds up. And you're like, no, I have the space and I have the time. And you get over, and then they have to, like, slow down, and they're mad. And you're like, why did you speed up? Just go about your day. I don't know. You're making yourself mad. It's a whole thing.
Star Trek dealt with this issue about the non-binary, species 25 almost years ago. Maybe it's 24 years ago. I forget. There's an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's a whole planet of them. And actually, one of the characters decided, instead of being non-binary, like the entire planet, this one wanted to identify as female. And then this character got completely shunned by society. And it was a very interesting, like, reverse take on that. And that was back before any of these conversations were really happening out in the open. Right. Like, so that's another thing I love about these franchises is they deal with these very tough issues. Star Trek for sure has dealt with some of the craziest things, and people don't even realize that it's happening sometimes. They need to go back and watch that episode.
You know what one of my favorite characters of all time is? Venom. Venom is non-binary. I don't know if you're aware of this. Is Venom a boy? Is Venom a girl?
It be. I was just trying to think, what would they be? I'm trying to think of the right pronoun.
I don't know. It gave birth to
Venom.
Carnage.
It's just Venom. Yep.
It's always used neutral pronouns. I don't know.
That's a good point.
Like,
it's an alien. Why? Yeah, why are people pressed about it anyway?
but yeah, this kind of we may have taken a left turn here.
That's why these, like I keep saying, these stories are important. These conversations are important so that we can see perspectives beyond our own. I've learned tremendous things just on TikTok. I would like to think that I've learned a lot in my 40 plus years. I won't give the exact number before I got to TikTok, but I've learned a lot from all of you and everybody that's in the chat. And there's like, I'm learning every day. It's one of the things I love the most about this community. So,
absolutely. So, something about me, I guess feel free to cancel me if you need to, but I didn't know how, I didn't realize that female fans loved Star Wars as deeply as I did. And it was because I hadn't run into it. I didn't know any. I knew ones that were fans, but most of those cases, I was a fan, and like my buddy was a fan, and then he married someone and brought them into it, and that's problematic. That's stupid. It's really dumb that I couldn't make that connection because I haven't seen it personally. That's like, right now I do not own an umbrella. Why? Because I live in San Diego. It'd be an idiot if I'm like, why do you have this umbrella? It never rains. Like, I don't live in San Diego, bro. Like, I don't know.
that's why the first time people have maybe an ignorant perspective, as long as they're not being a complete douche about it, I will try to give them some grace and say, well, maybe you haven't been exposed to this. Because I know I grew up in a small town in East Texas, and there was very little diversity. I mean, there were white and black. I grew up in a black neighborhood, but beyond that, there was nothing else. There was no other races, and I just hadn't experienced anything. I had no idea what their cultures were like. I got to college and started traveling to Asia and other places, and ended up marrying an Asian. I've gotten some different perspective. I mean, a lot of my study was anthropology, but I had to go experience things before I finally could see things like what you're describing. That the Brooks out there absolutely exist, and they're totally valid, absolute true fans, and we should know that. But I'm going to give people
Brooks
some
kick ass. She's like the
at
best
first.
fan.
Oh yeah, totally. But once you get exposed to that on social media and you still refuse to accept it, yeah, then I'm probably going to kick you in the teeth a little bit, virtually.
Yeah, I hope me saying any of that stuff didn't make you uncomfortable. But also, did you make the, is that a Mjolnir on one ear and a cap shield on the
It
other?
is. Yep.
I just noticed that they didn't match. That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, far away factory. I'll check it out. No, so going forward though, what do you think we can do? Because obviously there's a cycle that keeps repeating. Everyone loved the first Star Wars film, right? Which is funny because it wasn't original, and George was certain that he was going to have to get the rights to Howl's Moving Castle. Not Howl's Moving Castle. What the hell am I talking about? To Flying Fortress. Moving Castle, Flying Fortress. You can see how my brain... I apologize. Because it wasn't a truly original idea. But he took the spin on this genre that no one's ever seen before. Right? Then we get Empire. People hated Empire. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because they brought a stupid puppet in and had to act with a human. What kind of garbage is this? Like, this isn't what I signed up for. And then Jedi came out. People hated on Jedi. All these little bears are going to fight the Empire. And then special editions came in. People hated those. This isn't the same movie I grew up with. And it just keeps going. What do we do? What do you think we could do to move forward with this? And I think it started with Hammy last time, so I'll start with Brooke.
That's such a loaded question. I think someone in the documentary said, like, we like this thing, so we want more of this thing that's just like this thing. And how do you give someone something that's exactly the same? It's just going to be that thing. So if you like that thing so much, then You can watch that thing 8,000 times if you want to, but eventually, to keep other people interested, it's going to have to change a bit. And a big shift we're seeing now, which is hopefully moving into an even better direction, is representation, not only in who we see on screen, but also the people that are behind the screen in the industry is, I think, super important. That is, I would argue, almost more important than, obviously, I want everyone to be able to see themselves on screen, but we also want to do justice to those stories. So if you have, a story about a bunch of women, but it's written by a man, how authentic is that really going to be? So I think with this new generation of Star Wars things, Disney Plus things, we're seeing a better direction as far as the creators. As far as fans, that's such a hard question to answer. As a community, we just kind of have to call it out when we see something that's not right and keep trucking along with what we think is right and try to be louder than the loud minority of people that want everything to stay the way it is because it fits what they want and it fits their thing. I think having conversations like this is super important. I loved watching the Star Wars Theory stream the other night. Was it perfect? No. Were there a lot of issues that I had with it still? Yes, but baby steps, I guess. The fact that they're even willing to have conversations like that, I think, is incredibly important to get a wider perspective, because someone like that, yes, has 3 million followers, but those 3 million followers all follow him because they like what he says, and they might take what he says as gospel, and they might not understand other perspectives because they're not looking for those other perspectives. So as creators with platforms, to be able to be willing to listen and also elevate voices of other people is super important, and being more open-minded as fans is important too.
And then also for everyone here and everyone in the chat, because I 100% agree with that. I try to make it very, very clear on my posts when I'm sharing something from canon or if I'm sharing something from my own personal experience. I even put up a label that says opinion sometimes. So I try very hard to make that distinction because I don't want people to take my word as gospel. But if I'm ever slipping, please keep me honest. Let me know. Call me out, and don't be a dick about it. but yeah, I would hate to share bad information. That's just not what I want to do. Jake, have your thoughts?
So we are at a crossroads, I think. I mean, I guess we're always at a crossroads, aren't we? But when the internet,
Harmony are. Sorry.
when the internet was still pretty new is when the prequels were coming out, and everybody, like I said, a lot of sites sprung up and chats and whatever just to hate on the prequels and to hate on George Lucas. And now we've got YouTube where it has become a literal business to hate on Disney. And these guys make money off of just this narrative. A lot of it, some of it's some people's opinions, some of it's just fake news. Like, I won't even give them a platform on here and name them, but there are some channels that are just garbage. And people parrot that stuff. However, when I make content, when you make content, and others that call it out, and we're trying not to be dicks about it, although maybe I don't try too hard sometimes. But it's I have fun with people. But there's this democratic, platform where we can go out and make content too. And if people like it and they want to hear it, then they're going to boost us. And maybe, we can finally do a counterbalance to all that disinformation. and just bring positivity, exactly like what you're trying to do here, and with all the stuff that you do. So I very much appreciate that. I feel like today I had somebody comment, and I really appreciate what they said. They're very well meaning, but they said, I wish you would just ignore all the hate comments. I do ignore like 99% of them. I'm very selective of the few that I pick, and now I only try to do it 1 or 2 days a week, because I did realize it was getting a little bit like, Kevin's just taking another guy to task behind the woodshed again. I don't want to be that negative guy all the time, but at the same time, I have more people than I care to name and admit for their own privacy come to me daily and say, I used to be like this, and finally I heard you, or I heard Element 7 or Darth Chaco or somebody give this positive perspective, and suddenly I'm not that way anymore, and I appreciate you and I appreciate them, and that makes me excited about what I'm doing. It just makes me want to go bigger and do way more. So that's why I'm looking to expand my YouTube channel and actually get some content out there that can be a counterbalance in the force to all the garbage that's out there. I think maybe help a generation that the ones that actually have a brain and will look to say, okay, is it just this person or these people that I hear all the time, the negativity, or maybe there's another perspective? I should look at that and do something else with it. So I think there's a big opportunity right there.
Absolutely. I agree. And Hammy, your thoughts?
I guess for me personally, on my channel, I mostly do like opinion pieces, I guess, or like theories and stuff like that. So for me, as a younger person, I think, I understand the younger person's perspective more, especially since most people my age, maybe even myself included, are ignorant sometimes, and I can admit that. And I try my best personally to call it out, but at the same time be understanding, because I once was that type of person, I guess, but at the same time I know that they can change, and I know what not to say, because I know if I make a response video to something that's toxic, they may just want that. They may, that's what they want. They want me to get frustrated. But if I come at them calmly, respectfully, and I try to offer them a chance to have a conversation, like I've always advocated for, longer form discussion. I think it's, TikTok's a great platform, but you only have a minute, so there's not much you can do. If you slip up and you say something wrong, people could twist it. So, I try to, have a longer, in-depth conversation. And, I do my best, if I'm wrong about something, I want people to call me out. And if they disagree, I also want people to tell me they disagree. And we can, have a conversation about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this has been awesome. I think I might want to make it a regular thing where in my Discord server I will show some type of film or something like that. There's been talks of us actually watching the original versions of Star Wars, the unruined versions, as some people would say. And maybe come here as a forum to talk about it or something like that. So hopefully I can get this going. This has been a lot of fun to talk to you guys about this stuff. I do think it's important, and again I do think that this is that we're healing. And there's a lot of people that hate the sequels, and that's cool. That's totally fine. I don't think they'll change. There have been some people that look at things differently or understand other perspectives, but as we've seen with the special editions and with the sequels and the prequels and all the stuff, that the people that grew up with this as their full scope of what Star Wars is are going to grow up with this as their full scope of what Star Wars is. So And I applaud that, and I applaud that future. I think it's very bright, and we have a lot of places to go. But yeah, let's to close up. Let's go ahead and go around the room again, and you can let us all know where we can find you and your content. If there's anything pending, you guys are about to make moves and kick ass or whatnot. But also just give us any closing thoughts or things that you think people should keep in mind. And for this one, I will start with Hammy.
So guys, you can find me on TikTok at Hammy the Man. You can also find me on Twitch at that same username, and you can find me on YouTube at Drew H. That's where all my Star Wars content is primarily. Yeah, and I guess just my takeaway from this is, try to listen to people. I guess try to be understanding and be respectful as possible. Don't be reactionary. Just take a breath, relax, and if you don't like something, you don't like it. So there's going to be more Star Wars content, obviously, and you'll find something you like. I guarantee it. So just enjoy the things you love, and try not to hate the things other people do.
Nice, I love it. And Brooke.
Yeah. Well, closing thoughts, I guess. If you are a creator of any sort, no matter how small your platform is, you have the ability to be influential to someone else. Because I don't have a very large platform by any means, but I have had other girls and women come to me and tell me that I've inspired them to start talking about Star Wars or talking about the things that they're passionate about. And that makes me feel awesome. Because as much as I can, my comments, I can sometimes be a comment punching bag for people that don't agree with my opinions. If I know that it is inspiring at least one other person to be a little more confident in themselves, then I think that's good. If you're not a content creator and you're just a consumer of said content, just be a little more open-minded to listen to others. But you can find me at TikTok. My TikTok is bdazzler, b_dazzler. Those are where most of my content comes from. Mostly Star Wars stuff, some Marvel stuff now. I am your resident simp for male characters with questionable morals, if you like that kind of thing. I think my Instagram and Twitter are b_dazzler95. I'm not that interesting over there, but if you want to follow me there, that's cool. And if you want to have some really cool earrings made out of Legos and other cool stuff, you can go to Far Far Away Factory on Etsy and help fund my Disney World trip that happens at the end of this month.
Awesome. I love it. One thing I do have to add is she always promotes her earrings, but I've seen her paint like Revenge of the Sith jackets of Obi-Wan and Anakin, like cover art stuff on the back of a jacket. Awesome stuff. So it's, I don't know. You should check it out. There's more than just earrings.
You can find that stuff at Far Far Away Factory on Instagram if you want to see my portfolio.
Yes.
But thanks.
And last but certainly not least, we have J. Kevin Parker.
Yes, this is amazing. I appreciate these conversations. To be a part of them is just really inspiring to me. And to hear people say, I've had people say the same thing to me, Brooke, where it's like, I didn't feel like I could say anything. I could even share my opinion, but and they'll name a lot of people, but we're all helping them to feel bold enough to actually do it. And that we stand up to the haters. It doesn't mean all of them necessarily want all the hate. I get every day, I have friends that are like, oh, I'm so sorry that you get all that hate. Don't feel sorry for me. I have skin thicker than Beskar. I do this on purpose. I purposefully try to pull a lot of those out. I consider myself a professional troll hunter. And if they're bothering me, then that means they're not spending that minute or two bothering somebody else, is the way I look at it. And yes, I might convince one of them to change once in a while, but just like Matt Damon said, I didn't do it for him, when he was playing Loki, but not really. I don't really do it for those guys. I do it for the ones who are on the fence about it, but particularly for the ones who don't feel bold enough to stand up and actually say anything, even in comments. One of my mutuals doesn't even produce any content, but he has been such a a defender of people liking what they want to like, not of a movie or something like that. But like he's just been so good as a defender of people that we've become very good friends. And we're talking about after pandemic, we're going to meet up and grab lunch or something. I think that would be amazing. So like you don't have to create a ton of content in order to be a positive influence in the Star Wars community. Just like a video, leave a nice comment, tell somebody, hey, that's not cool, when they're acting like a douche, and then I'll consider you a very good friend. Kevin Parker on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram, and Epic Worldview on YouTube. I'm going to grow that channel. I only have a handful of videos there now, but it's coming.
Awesome. No, I love it, and I appreciate you, JKev. I feel like I kind of feel like it's like a an MMO party, and JKev is the tank, right? He pulls all the aggro. I'm ranged DPS is my role, but we wouldn't succeed without you. No, but I want to thank you guys so much for coming on here, having an open discussion. I want to have more of these. Hopefully we can keep this thing going, not only to benefit the community, which is the main goal, but I like talking to you guys, so we'll keep this going. And we will say on to the next one. Thank you guys for coming out. Thank you everyone in the chat. Let's actually do some more chat shout outs before taking off. I wanted to, because I'm appreciative to everyone that's here. We have Tom Watts is here, Flame Runner, Sokka, the Avatar guy, which is expanded. It was just Sokka before. It was just Sokka last time. Jon Snow's here, Cal4, for Julie Christine, X-Core Gamer Skills. Element 7 is my dude. He's my dyad. If you're not following him, please follow him. He and I have a separate podcast called Diet and the Force that's every weekend. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much. Chatting Time just got here. Just commented like 2 seconds ago, so he missed the whole thing. I'm shouting him out, but I'm putting you on blast. Get here earlier next time, jerk. Thank you guys for joining me, and may the Force be with you always.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.